Hello guys, right then, so for today we have in a Nakamichi cassette deck 2, which I believe is kind of the early 90s after Nakamichi had all its crazy cassette deck systems out. This was there into the 90s version. It still has the Sankyo transport that a lot of these do, but this one is in with a couple of faults. Number one is the screen is kind of tilted, and number two is intermittent. It intermittently stops playing, which has been known to be part of the real motor issue that Sankyo transport suffer from, and the real motor develops a bit of a dead spot. But we're also going to check the tape pickup system and see if it's that. So let's get into this, have a quick look around the deck, and then we'll go from there. So it's quite difficult to see, but the screen there behind the front panel is slightly tilted. So if I put us dead center and on, you can see that it's kind of tilted up and to the right. So the front panel is going to come off and see what we can do about that. When turning the deck on, then the motor makes a pretty horrendous noise a couple of times with a little bit of grinding. Let's see if we can test it. It's the real motor basically kind of winding the tape on a little bit when you turn the system on, and it takes up the slack in the tape. So having a noise from the real motor also ties in with our intermittent stopping. So stick a tape in and see what it's going to do and what it's not going to do. So I'm going to press the power button, turn it on, and it should kind of wind this on a little bit. It's not wound it on because it's not further on in the tape, so I'll put a bit of fast forward on it. Fast forward and rewind works fine. This is the later version of Sankyo transport that doesn't have the idler tyre behind this here. So now we're a bit further on in the tape. If I were to turn it off and on again, this will kind of put a little bit of a wind on the tape in order to take up any slack. There, did you see it? Let's try it again. So the real motor's doing its job, but sometimes they do develop those flat spots, and the flat spot can cause the tape to stop basically. But there's a way of finding out whether it's the optical pickup which is inside the transport or it's a real motor problem. And the way of doing that is when you play it and it stops, you keep an eye on the right reel and the left reel. If the right reel stops first, maybe a second or so before the left reel, then generally it is the take-up reel that's the issue. If the right reel stops before the left reel and then it stops playing, generally the issue is to do with the real motor having a flat spot, because what's happening is the real motor stopping, the real motor powers this take-up reel when it's playing, slowly bringing the tape round to get rid of any slack in the tape, and then once the system detects this has stopped, then it stops the play function. If, however, both stop at the same time, then it's probably the sensor and we'll have to get the oscilloscope out. So I'm going to press play and see what happens. That's us powered on. And that's us playing. We've got levels and the timer's moving. Now the timer moving is generally a good sign that it's not the optical pickup that's the fault. It's possibly the real motor. But it could be intermittent. So let's have a look at the tape while it does it. It has stopped of its own accord there. We all love a bit of Chaz and Dave in here, don't we? So I'm going to press play and I'm going to see if I can catch it on camera if this reel stops before this one. So I'm going to turn it off and on again so it takes up that slack. There's the slack taken up, and now I'm going to press play. And we'll see if we can capture it. Hopefully this will stop first. It kind of didn't. If you noticed, it actually kind of span the other way. Yeah, I might try and do that in slow motion for the purpose of the video. So here's that in slow motion. There we go. So when it failed, it actually put a bit of reverse on, which is a bit strange. Now the counter itself has wound on fine, so I'm going to say it's possibly the real motor having a dead spot. I think I'll test the pickup anyway. It's just inside the transport. Obviously you guys have seen that in slow motion and seen what it's done there. It can only really be two things. One is the real motor and one is the optical pickup. We could try taking this reel off and just inspecting the reel table on the back of it, which is what the optical pickup looks at. So let's do that first and make sure it's clean, and then see if we can repeat the problem then, and if we can, then we'll pop the top off and go in the transport. So with the door cover off then, these are held in place by these little washers here. So it's just a case of getting this, if I can just get a suitable tool, it's a case of removing this dark grey washer around here, and then once this black plate is off, it will allow us to remove the rail table there. I've already taken the screws out for the plate, so I believe we can just pop that plate off if I can get a suitable tool in and do a little bit of wiggling. And it's just a plug on the main board, and that just needs threading out with the plate, just like so, and gently teasing around the little spring switch that's in there. So that's our wire, it just pops off, and it's because this has got a light on the back, which is nice, you know, but we'll keep that in a safe place. There we go. As you can see, that's tiny. And there is our rail table. And before we put that back on, I'm going to leave this in place, but this has got like a cam on it that sits inside that hole. And just move you around a little bit. That hole at the back there, this here has a cam on it that sits inside that hole. You can just tease it round. So when we place that back in, it must be seated inside the hole. So generally I leave these in place because otherwise they're just dying to get lost. And there is a spring behind them, and that would just get seated in there when we put our rail seat back on. On the back of the rail seat then, which is what our efforts are about, as I said, you've got black and silver. It's actually pretty clean. I don't think that's our issue, but we'll give it a bit of a wipe. A lot of times the black becomes worn, and it can cause it to just get confused between what's going on, but we'll give this a bit of a clean. And then once this goes back on there, like so, the simplest way to put this little washer back on, this one, is to just have it on your finger like that, and then just press it in place, like so. So that's back where it was, and that's fine. I don't think that cleaning will make any difference, but if it does, let's plug it back in and give it a test. We don't need the plate on in order to make a test. Let's see if that's improved things at all. That's what's playing now. Alright then, so while it's playing then, what I've decided to do is hook the oscilloscope up, and I've got my test point there on the back of that little PCB, if you can just see it. That PCB is the back of the rail sensor, which is sensing whether this is working or not. I've got the earth point onto the chassis ground, and what's happened is this tape is still playing, and while it's playing, as you can see there's my waveform. That's up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. That is the system detecting those black and silver plates on the back of the rail table, and that is working fine. So realistically, with this in mind, I'm happy that rail sensor is working correctly. So if this does fail or stop again, I'm going for dead spots on the motor. And the real motor is this one here that says BHS7B02. It is an absolute classic to fail on these Sankyo transports. I've replaced more than a few, but it does require a full transport strip down. These are very difficult to get hold of now. You usually have to replace it with a newer generic motor, which works fine, but some people absolutely have a bee in a bonnet about it not being Nakamichi. You could strip and clean and repair these, but from a commercial perspective, that's probably not worth it. If it's your own deck, crack on. But this isn't my deck. And you know what? Just as I've been talking there, it's just stopped. So we got to 551 on the rail counter. So from my testing of that rail table, I've cleaned it, I've tested it, the sensor's working fine. I'm going to say it's a flat spot on that rail motor, which means this transport is coming out. So for now, I'm going to nip off and order myself up a new reel motor for the person whose deck it is. I don't think they're that expensive, honestly. I think they're maybe £10–15, something like that. But I will have an investigate and look at what I did last time I repaired this fault, which I think was on a BX2, which is the same Sankyo transport. And these are just, you can Google it, they're well known. Search Sankyo transport reel motor flat spot and there'll be loads of posts for it. And that's going to be the plan for that. So there you go. I'll be back soon, hopefully with a new motor. So while I'm waiting for the reel motor to be delivered, I thought I would remove this front panel and then get into here. But what it turns out is you don't need to remove the entire front panel. If you look onto the back of the front panel, if I just swing us over, the board that contains this display module is simply just clipped into place. So you don't need to remove the whole thing. And weirdly, it seems like someone has just twisted it. I'm not entirely sure how it's happened, but it has actually just been twisted on its pins, if you look. So I think we can very carefully twist that back round to upright, and it should allow us to view it nice and straight on the front. So I'm going to try and reset it very, very carefully. This is just on metal pins that are soldered into the back there. I don't want to damage this, obviously, because it's going to be very difficult to replace it. So I'm going to do it by putting pressure on the pins as opposed to the unit. Have fun watching me try this. I have no idea how somebody could have done this. I really don't. I'm just really gently kind of pressing that down back into place. It seems to be a relatively straightforward job. I'm not entirely sure how that could have happened. I've been so gentle. Okay, I think that has about got it. If we look down there, there is a little bit of play, so that adhesive isn't actually doing its job. So I think I'm going to reset it with a little bit of epoxy as well. On the other side, we're all the way down to the stop. As you can see, this, if I use my best finger, this stop here, it's actually sat on the stop. Whereas over this side, we're a little bit off. So I think I might just mix a little bit of epoxy, 2-part epoxy, and then replace the adhesive qualities of what was underneath here, and maybe try and lightly clamp it down into place somehow. Yeah, let's see if that works. This one's Argh, but you get the Gorilla Glue ones that kind of are in a double syringe kind of thing, and they only need a tiny bit, if I'm honest. That's probably far too much. If I can get this one off. And then we'll just 50-50 it. So that's about good. Now it's the next day and our epoxy has nicely dried. As you can see, it's retaining that where it should have been in the first place. So it's just a case of popping this back onto the front panel, which is just in front of it under there. Some pins to sit it on. And that's it. Checking our alignment now, that's all nice and straight, so that's one job done. Alright then, so finally our new reel motor has turned up. This is a Mabuchi RF500TB, direct replacement, same speed, same mounting screw holes, everything like that. So I'm going to whip this transport out. I'm not going to show the video of me whipping the transport out because I've done it before in my other Nakamichi videos, which should be in the description. So I'll get this out and then we can do a quick dismantle, swap the reel motor over, hopefully without any issues, and that should be us. So thankfully, with this being the uprated Sankyo transport, they have added some niceties really to help us with the servicing. And the first one is this reel motor actually is on a completely separate plate, as you can see down here. Whereas in previous iterations, you had to remove absolutely everything. So we've got a couple of screws on this side, and then that plate and the motor will lift out. But on the other side, what we need to do is we need to remove both of these reel tables, so this one and this one. Just as we did a minute ago, we're going to pop these washers off I'll lift them out, and then this bit here carefully goes through this little gap, and we do need to remove this arm and lever assembly. This flips backwards and forwards for fast forward and rewind. But basically it's just a case of popping it off the motor. There's the motor shaft there, that silver bit, that's your old motor shaft, and that kind of should be us really. Pretty straightforward for this transport. It does save an awful lot of time. This has recently been serviced. It's got a new belt and pinch roller, and it's very, very clean, and it has no other faults. You know, everything's really nice and clean and sorted. So a couple of these leaf switches will probably give a bit of a cursory clean, because yeah, they are fun. But because it's not cam driven, sometimes they have like a cam system up here. It's a bit more simplistic. It's a little bit later. So that's it really. And then we're just a case of just desoldering these, refitting the motor, resoldering our connections back on, making sure they're the right way around. And we're looking the new Mabuchi motor data sheet for that, as to which one's negative and which one's positive. And then we'll do a quick test spin on the bench to make sure it's spinning the right direction. Otherwise it's going to rewind when you want fast forward, and fast forward when you want rewind. And then nobody want that. We're going to have to remove the motor plate, pull the capstan, and then we should be able to get it out. But again, 1, 2, 3 screws for the motor plate, and the capstan just pulls out. These are actually really, really tight screws. It's quite important to have a decent screwdriver. I don't know why they're so tight, but they are. And there we have it. So as you can see, this little piece has a spring on the top there, and just sits over the top, so don't lose your spring. We need to make sure that's refitted and lubricated when it goes back on. There's that bit. And then there's our motor. As you can see, it is well and truly on with a absolute rigmarole of different things. But first thing we need to do is remove it from this plate, and then we can work out how we're going to remove this as well. Alright, there we go. And now, if I just do a bit of inspecting, I believe that this, because it's plastic and not brass, it should basically be a push fit removal, just like that. I'm glad that went that well, because finding a replacement would be impossible, I think. Oh, a minute. It's removal in order. So it is that bit first with a little felt washer on it, which retains the friction for the arm. So that's first. And then without pinging this spring, it is the arm. Then it is the spring, which has an arm, a locating arm in it. The locating arm goes outmost. And then we have a black washer, and finally this bush, which is also friction fitted. So I've done a cursory test as well by plugging this into a power supply, and now I'm confident which way around the wires are going to be going. So it's a case now of just resoldering. Right, that's us in. Now we just got to refit all the bump that goes on top, and hopefully we'll be fine. Alright, so I've refitted the motor to the plate and I've refitted the motor, and now it's just a case of a re-oil of the capstan as it goes back in. It's just been cleaned, as has its bushing, so we're all good there. I also like to oil on this washer and underneath, just because it's rotational really. And it sits on its feet. Belt. Very, very gentle wiggle and turn maneuver. There's the wiggle. There's the turn. And I'm just going to move this wire out of the way. Like so. And there's the final wiggle. And then a couple of screws. Get in from underneath and fit it over the pulley. Like that. Ha! Perfect. Alright, so I think I'll pop these two reel tables back on. From this side we are all good. And I believe we should be okay. Our reel locks, which are these kind of brake pads at the back here, just make sure that's nice and free. That's actuated by a cam. This black bit here is the original sensor that we were picking up on the oscilloscope. As you can see, it's got an emitter and a collector. It emits light from one bit and collects it on the other side, and that's where we saw the signal on the oscilloscope at the start of the video. So I am going to refit these bad boys. You can watch it on fast forward if you want. In fact, I'll do the first one not on fast forward. So it's spring first, and then it's this kind of plastic effort with a washer on top of it, which goes into the little transport hole down there. If you can just see it, little transport hole. That arm's going to fit into it when you refit your reel. And while you've got them off, always just have a look and make sure that they're clean and oiled. These have just been cleaned and oiled. So when you're fitting it, you need to just look down in that hole and make sure that exactly what's just happened there doesn't happen. Make sure that's aligned. Kind of hold it into place if you can. That's it, I think. Yep, that's it. And as I said before, just dab the washer on top of your finger. There's a fly buzzing around in here, hopefully you can't hear it. And that's us. Reel table's in, that's kind of locked in place by that brake system that I showed you. So it's the same for the other side, just make sure you get the right reel table in. This is the one without the colours on, so this is the one for the non-sensor side. There is a hole for the sensor in the circuit board just there, which is quite interesting. But we'll do this one on fast forward. Okay, just a quick check that those pins are in the locating positions. Yes, and yes, you can just see them through there on the back. So I think we're kind of ready to test that now. It's not fully reassembled and everything, you know, but I think we can give that a bit of a test. It's aligning with these reels beautifully. There's a little fly buzzing around. You can just hear it. I wonder if it's a Nakamichi fly. Maybe it's Japanese. I don't know what Japanese is for fly. Maybe I'll find out. I'm going to have to get rid of him actually. Okay, so from that, at this point, I'm about a week past what you've just watched. And I fitted the motor and, you know, everything was good. That motor was cited on forums, Facebook posts, everywhere. That's the one to get. That's the model to get. Everything's good. Put it in the deck and it was running at about 1 billion miles an hour. Alright, it's going to send you tapes into the future if you were to use that motor. So, the motor that you've just watched me fit, on the basis of all the information I can find, was this. And this was a Mabuchi RF500TB. Now, this is actually not a 12 volt motor. That deck, which is just sat next to me there, puts 12 volt to this take-up rail motor, and it's spinning at about twice the speed. It's basically a 3.8 volt motor. Regardless of what the posts say, regardless of what the technical specs say, it is running at the correct speed if you put 4 volts to it. Now obviously I don't want to modify the deck and change it, so instead of putting its usual 12 volts to the motor, it's putting 4 volts in order to correct it. So basically the solution is to find another motor. This took me a long time to try and work this out, alright? And I'll show you why this also, it wasn't particularly great. So this is our original motor out of the Nakamichi, and this was our Mabuchi. Now you can see the shaft is a little bit shorter. It did fit, but it's a little bit shorter. In fact, I'll just level them out a little bit. You see, it's probably about 5-6 mil shorter, maybe a little more. So the purpose of this video is I went and did all that work there, rebuilt the transport nice and neat, nice and tidy, and this was useless actually. So they're great if you're getting 5 volts to a deck, so I'm going to keep this in stock for something else this may happen with. I think Yamaha's is quite similar to that. So after trawling many technical specs, I've got motors coming out my ears here actually, and I also have a huge box of motors up on my top shelf, and none of them were correct either. After much deliberation, I found this. Now this is a RF500TB 12560. Now this says it runs at DC 6 volts. Okay, so I believe that Nakamichi motor there is also actually a 6 volt motor, but when you put 12 volts into it, you achieve the correct desired speed. I'll put those over there. If you were to buy this motor, it has an elongated shaft for now, and there's our original Nakamichi. So the problem with this is I had to buy 2 of these. They only shipped in pairs. I specifically wanted the one with the longer shaft, so I eventually found it, and what I did is, this is the second one. The other one I've fitted to the deck, and we're going to test that in a second. I genuinely haven't yet tested it. I've just fitted it, and then I reviewed all my footage from previous and then carried on with the video. It's about 6 mil longer than this one. You can fit this and it's fine, but if you fitted it, it sticks out too much and you can't get the plate on that goes behind your tape with the light and stuff. So I had to basically trim this down, which seems to be what the person who had posted something with a similar problem to me, yonks to go on tape heads, they had a similar thing. Trimmed the shaft, refitted it, oiled in the motor, obviously because it's a brand new motor as well, and I have fitted it. Obviously, as you can imagine, that took me about another 2 hours to dismantle and rebuild the transport, refit the belt. I had to re-clean and lubricate everything because I didn't want to get oil where it doesn't want to be. So this is the one that we've fitted, and it's not far off what this Mabuchi thing was. It's a little bit more slimline, which is quite nice, I suppose. I have tested these and I've ran them up on a power supply. They're nice and quiet as well, which obviously makes a difference. I'm pretty much happy with that, really. That is the lack of the fact that you can't get a Nakamichi real motor, and I don't want to refurb it because they always just fail anyway. This motor is your direct replacement. Okay, this is the one you want. They seem pretty straightforward to find, but I had to look up the specs and the sheets and the sizing and the bolt holes and all the rest of the stuff. So there we go. let's get this thing tested and packed off and done, because this has been a bit of a mission. The moral of the story is, don't put too much faith into forum posts from a long time ago. If you know, you've got to test it. You've got to think, is that going to work? Look up the specs, look up the motor, and just make sure that what you're doing is correct. Because I took it on trust, and I ended up wasting a couple of weeks there, and I also ended up wasting whatever that motor cost. I think it was about, I don't even remember. I think it was about 12 quid, something like that. But yeah, there you go. Onwards and upwards. So there we go then. There's our second attempt at our real motor repair. Note which way around the wires go if you're doing this yourself. So blue is on this side, red is on that side. Red is the power and blue is the earth for the sake of this deck. Alright, the moment of truth. So I've got my test tape, and what should happen with this is when I put the tape in, oh, there you go. It's wound the wheel. Bloody hell! It's wound the reel back. So when I pop this tape in, it should detect that I've put tape in and take up the slack. Let's put a bit of slack in the tape actually, and just have a little bit of a test. So we've put a little bit of slack in the tape there. I've just wound it forward a little bit. So this should take up the slack, which it has beautifully. And we'll start with a rewind. And notice it's rewinding the correct way. If you had the power and the negative the wrong way around on your motor, it would rewind the wrong way. And fast forward also works well as well. I think there might be some music on this tape, so maybe we could see some levels. But I'll just turn my amp down. Alright, playing beautifully. So that is playing. So let's put some music through it and let's see what the speed sounds like, if there's any feedback, if there's any mess, or you know, just make sure this is going to work correct. So bear with me a second, I'll find my YouTube royalty free music tape, we'll give it a test. And here we are then, the amp's cranked up. I'll just crank it up a little bit more and let's see what it sounds like. I'm going to call that one a win, ladies and gentlemen. It sounds absolutely fantastic. I'm even going to go with delightful. But this is a nice little bit of royalty-free YouTube music, so I'm going to call this one a win. I'm going to go off and do a little bit of azimuth correction and just double check the levels, but it is sounding absolutely great. The levels are exactly what I inputted in, and everything seems to be good. So winner winner, chicken dinner. Awesome. So that's us. So there we go. Brings us to the end of another nice little video. The moral of the story is, do not believe everything you see online or hear online. Whether that includes me, I don't know. But by the nature of videos, obviously things are edited, and the time taken with this one was actually quite a lot longer than what I thought. So I'm going to get this one back together. It needs a blooming good clean, I think, just a bit of a dust. So I've taken these off. We're going to put them through the ultrasonic and get all the grime off them, give it a massive clean and hand it back to its owner. If you like my videos and you want to see some more, please like and subscribe. I've been a bit slack with videos recently. Life is kind of getting in the way, but I'm trying. I've got an awesome video coming up with a Sony 5 cassette changer, which I've been trying to get hold of one for a yonk, and finally I did get hold of one. But there we go, brings us to the end. If you do like my videos, please like and subscribe. It's something ridiculous, like 80% of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed, and subscriptions make me happy. So have a nice day. I'm going to package this one up now. On to the next one, and peace.